Brilliance Audio.
The Dark Room by Lisa Gray. Performed by Michael Orenstein. They say you never forget your first, and that was definitely true for Leonard Blaylock. Angela had brassy blonde hair, blue eyes, and a wide smile that showed off the gap between her two front teeth. She wasn't a knockout in anyone's book, but she knocked the breath clean out of Leonard the first time he laid eyes on her. She was wearing a white dress that complemented her deep summer tan, and there was a burst of freckles on each shoulder where the skin had been burned by the sun. She was holding a glass of white wine, and she had a tattoo on the inside of her wrist that looked like a swallow. Leonard liked to think that it represented her love of travel, that it showed she was a free spirit, but it was so faded and blurred by the passage of time that it could have been Elvis for all he knew. He guessed her to be in her mid-30s. Later, he taped her photograph to his bedroom wall, smack dab in the middle, so he had a perfect view of her as he lay in bed. He'd lost count of the number of times he'd stared at that picture since, wondering what she'd been thinking at the exact moment the shutter went off. Was she happy, or was the gap-toothed smile only on display long enough for the click of the button? The camera never lied, but it rarely told the truth either. He'd committed every line and every curve to memory, but in technical terms, it wasn't a very good shot. The composition was poor, the focus wasn't sharp enough, and the flash had bounced off a shiny surface in the background, resulting in a yellow blob directly above Angela's head. It looked like a halo. Angel Angela. That's why he'd given her the name. Angela wasn't her real name, of course, or maybe it was. Leonard had no way of knowing. She wasn't his first kiss or first lay or first love. She was a complete stranger, just as the 58 other people whose images were taped to his wall were complete strangers. But she was the first, and that made her special. Leonard Blaylock wasn't a photographer. He never took any of the photos in his collection himself. He was a memory collector, a rescuer of lost moments. At least, that's how he described the mystery film's enthusiasts. Those who got a kick out of buying and developing other people's old, discarded, and forgotten camera film, in a newspaper feature he'd written a couple of years back. A bunch of loons was how Leonard had initially thought of them when he'd first been commissioned to write the piece for a Sunday paper. He couldn't for the life of him understand the appeal. He didn't have many friends left by then, not since the night his life had gone to shit and they'd gradually melted away one by one. But he remembered all too well being subjected to their vacation photos or pictures of their kids back in the day. Smiling politely and pretending to be interested, that was bad enough. To actually seek out and then spend money on old rolls of film belonging to people you didn't even know? That was just crazy. Even so, Leonard had decided to give it a go himself. It would add a nice personal touch to the article, provide an easy intro, maybe even result in some decent images they could print along with the words. So he logged onto eBay and made an offer on 2 used rolls of Kodak gold 35mm film from a seller in Knoxville, Tennessee. $25 plus another $5.25 for the shipping that he'd claimed back on expenses from the newspaper on top of his fee. What did he have to lose? A week later, he'd found a bubble envelope with the Tennessee postmark on it stuffed inside his mailbox, and Leonard realized he was intrigued by what he might discover, maybe even a little excited. That was the start of it. He should have called in a favor from one of the photographers at the New York Reporter and gotten them to develop the film for him. Leonard had spent 20 years at the paper, working his way up from intern to senior crime reporter. He had been the guy who broke the stories, the one who could always be relied upon for a front-page splash. But that was then. Everything had changed thanks to the events of a single night. There was Leonard's life before, and there was Leonard's life after. After, he was a freelancer, working for himself, finding excuses not to leave his apartment most days, barely scraping together enough cash to pay the rent. He'd quickly dismissed the idea of contacting any of his former co-workers, decided he'd be better off going old school and having the photographs developed the old-fashioned way. Rookie mistake. That first time he'd had mystery film developed was 2.5 years ago, but Leonard remembered the day like it was yesterday.